Ma'am, I don't think you realize what you're doing. My voice was calm, but my knuckles were white on the porch railing. Meredith Langston, our HOA president, all pearls and plastic, stood at the foot of my magnolia tree, clipboard cocked like a weapon. She didn't blink. You're in violation, Nora. You can't just replace a porch swing without submitting a request, page 47, clause 3, subsection F. I didn't budge. That swing's been here since before you ever moved in, Meredith. My father built it. The bolts are still his, hand cut. That motion sensor over your head? I nodded to the blinking red light above the door. Still connects straight to my server, not yours. She hesitated. It was slight, a quick glance at her phone, a twitch of her lip, but it was there. The HOA's digital fortress she'd always bragged can monitor every light, every gate, except mine. I'd designed my own security firmware when I worked nights for a defense contractor in Maryland. Meredith could huff and puff all she wanted. My house, my rules. My name's Nora Vance. I grew up on this patch of Magnolia Lane, right where the branches scraped the windows in a summer storm. I moved back after Dad died. Couldn't let the place rot, not after everything he'd built. My son Mason studies engineering at the state college. He's the only reason I haven't torched the mailbox in protest. They say you can't go home again, but some of us never really left. Quick pause, where are you watching from? Seriously, drop your city or country down below, and if you want to see what happens when you push a Vance too far, stick around. Meredith shifted her weight, her patent heels sinking into the dirt. I don't want this to get ugly, Nora. Neither do I stepped down off the porch, the wood creaking beneath me. My father's wood, sanded smooth by decades of boots and bare feet. But you keep crossing this property line. Remind me, who owns the land under the tree? She glanced up at the old swing, at the battered plaque on the tree trunk, H. Vance, 1979, carved by hand. It's a matter of standards, community property. That's not what the plat says. Want to see the survey? I kept my voice even, my heart pounding just beneath. I'd studied every document before I moved back. I had a file box in my office, every easement, every bylaw, every faded receipt. Dad always said, if you're going to stand your ground, make sure you know what you're standing on. The tree was blooming, its branches heavy with cream blossoms. Even Meredith couldn't ignore the smell, earthy and sweet, the scent of every summer I ever spent here. We all want what's best for Magnolia Lane, she tried, but her voice was brittle. I almost laughed. You want what's best for your idea of it, not for the people living here. Mason's car door slammed, sharp as a starter pistol. He jogged over, backpack slung one shoulder, earbuds dangling. Hey, Mom! What's going on? Meredith straightened. Mr. Vance, your mother and I were just discussing the swing and the property lines. Mason flashed a smile. That's not up for discussion, is it? He never lost his cool, never let them see a flicker of worry. Dad always said Mason had the backbone of a dock post. He won't bend, even if the tide rolls in. That made me smile. Meredith pursed her lips, scribbling something on her clipboard. You'll be hearing from the board. Looking forward to it, I replied. Don't forget to smile for the camera on your way out. She stalked off, shoes snapping in the gravel. I waited until she turned the corner before exhaling, my pulse finally easing. The porch swing creaked in the wind. I ran a hand over its armrest, tracing the initials. Dad's memory lived in every splinter, every knot of that wood. He'd built this place for us, and I wasn't about to let some bureaucrat with a thirst for power take it apart, one code violation at a time. Another love letter from the HOA? Mason asked, tossing his bag onto the swing. I rolled my eyes. Apparently our family heirlooms are a threat to civilization. He grinned. Guess it runs in the blood. It was true. Dad stood up to every bully who tried to claim his land. Banker, developer, or busybody neighbor. When the new HOA took over, he warned me. They'll come for the things that matter most. The trick is making them realize you matter more. The sky was turning gold behind the Magnolia. A breeze kicked up, setting the swing in motion. I closed my eyes and let it carry me back. Dad whistling, Mason laughing. The world a little quieter, a little kinder. Those memories were the roots that kept me steady. But I knew the storm was just beginning. After Meredith's heels disappeared down the lane, the world slipped back to normal, at least for a minute. The air still smelled of magnolia blossoms, but that lingering tension stayed, stubborn as a stain. I stood there, palm flat on the porch swing, thinking about Dad's voice in my head. Don't let them take what matters. The swing rocked, creaking with every breeze, comforting, but not enough to steady my nerves. Inside, I found Mason raiding the fridge. He looked up, a carton of milk in hand, and grinned. "She leave you a love note?" "Just threats and legal jargon," I said, letting the screen door bang behind me. "We're apparently one swing away from bringing down Western civilization." He snorted, taking a swig straight from the carton, something he'd never dare if my father was still alive. "Next, she'll cite us for not watering the grass in concentric circles." His joke hit the mark, and I felt the stress melt just a little. That's Mason for you. Never lets the world get under his skin. Not really. I admired it. He'd inherited that from his granddad, not from me. But the mailbox was another story. As I stepped outside to grab yesterday's mail, I noticed a yellow slip sticking out like a sore thumb. Notice of violation. My pulse skipped. Apparently, the color of our mailbox, dove gray, not regulation white, didn't fit the historic palette. Ridiculous. My father picked that color when he was a young man, said it hid dust better. Another little piece of him the HOA wanted to erase. I walked back inside, waving the slip. "Mailbox is illegal now." Mason gave me a mock salute. "Guess we're outlaws." I stuck the violation on the fridge, right next to a faded photo of my dad at the grill, smoke curling up, magnolia tree behind him. Each little skirmish was starting to feel personal, a battle for every memory in this house. Afternoon rolled into evening. I tried to focus on work. An old friend had called, needed help with some cybersecurity for her clinic's new system, but my mind kept wandering to Meredith, her smug smile, the way she always talked like she was the voice of the neighborhood. How many people has she pushed around? How many just gave up? By 7, Mason was out front tinkering with the mailbox. I joined him, watching as he fiddled with the hinges. "Gonna change it back to white?" I asked, voice dry. He grinned, holding up a tiny screwdriver. "Nah, just making sure it's solid, deterring vandals." He winked and I smiled despite myself. He'd painted a small, hidden symbol on the bottom, a little V for Vance. Quiet rebellion. Dad would have loved it. A pair of headlights swept down the lane. Our neighbor, Mrs. Wu, slowed her car as she passed, eyes flickering from the mailbox to Mason. She gave a small wave, almost apologetic. People noticed what happened here, even if they pretended not to. Magnolia Lane was a little world, and nothing stayed secret for long. Later, as I locked up for the night, I caught a shadow moving at the corner of the yard. Not an intruder, just Diane Trent, the HOA secretary, walking her ancient schnauzer. She paused at the sidewalk, looked at our house, then hurried on, shoulders hunched. Guilt or nerves? Hard to say. But I made a mental note. She was at every meeting, always scribbling, always silent. I stood on the porch a long time after everyone else had gone to bed. The swing rocked, groaning as I settled in. The air was heavy with the day's heat and the old magnolia's perfume. I traced the carved initials on the swing's arm, lost in thought. The board would send more letters, more warnings. Meredith wasn't the type to back down, but neither was I. Somewhere out there, my dad's old box of documents, surveys, deeds, letters from the original developer waited in the attic. I'd seen it a dozen times, but never looked through it closely. Now it felt important, like maybe that was where the real answers hid. I leaned back, legs tucked up, eyes on the branches. I could hear my father's voice, low, steady. "You don't win by fighting harder, Nora. You win by knowing more than they do." And I promised him, right there in the warm dark, that I wasn't letting anyone erase our name from Magnolia Lane. By sunrise, my head was still spinning with old documents and the hollow threat of more letters. Magnolia Lane felt different in the early morning, quiet, almost forgiving, as if the house itself was rooting for me. The swing out front was already rocking in the breeze, sending soft creaks through the stillness. Dad always said, "Never trust a day that starts too calm." I smiled at that. He was right more often than not. Coffee in hand, I shuffled to the mailbox, wondering what fresh rule Meredith would try to enforce next. Nothing yet, just the usual circulars and a cheery card from the local garden club. I flipped through the mail, feeling a pinch of nostalgia for simpler days. The calm wouldn't last. Around 9, Mason shouted from the kitchen, "Mom, they're clogging up the group chat again." I wandered in, half expecting another HOA missive about our offensive lawn gnome, but it was a board announcement. Mandatory meeting for all homeowners, attendance required. The tone wasn't just strict, it was smug. Meredith must have been up half the night drafting it. Mason frowned. What'd she want now? An apology for having taste? More likely, an audience, I muttered, sipping coffee. My nerves felt brittle, but the fight in me was rising again. I pulled out a notepad and started jotting questions. My father taught me, if you can't win their approval, win their respect. If not that, their silence. I straightened my shoulders, ready for the spotlight. The community hall was packed that evening. Every folding chair was filled. Families, retirees, newcomers. Meredith stood at the front, beaming like a politician, flanked by her faithful, Linda from the next block, and at the end of the table, Diane Trent. She looked up just as I entered, her hand trembling as she fussed with the minutes. Her eyes darted away from mine. Meredith started with pleasantries, her voice syrupy sweet. We gathered tonight to address recent challenges. Her gaze landed on me, a polite smile hiding daggers. Certain homeowners have not adhered to our agreed standards. Property lines, mailbox colors, unauthorized modifications. Neighbors shifted in their seats. A few offered me sympathetic glances. Mason, leaning against the wall, gave me a quick thumbs up, half encouragement, half dare. I waited. Let Meredith rattle off every bylaw. The air was thick, the hum of the overhead lights almost louder than her speech. When she paused for dramatic effect, I seized the moment. Excuse me, Meredith, could you clarify where it says a porch swing, installed in 1980, needs board approval? My voice was steady, loud enough for the room. And why mailbox colors matter more than potholes or streetlights that haven't worked in months. A ripple went through the crowd. Diane's pen stalled on the page. Meredith bristled but pressed on, hiding her irritation behind an official smile. We simply ask everyone follow the same standards, no special treatment. Funny, I said, a little too sharply, because the rules seem to change depending on who you're talking to. She shot back, if you have a complaint, file it in writing. I already have, 3 times, no response. Diane dropped her pen. It clattered, echoing in the quiet. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. For a split second, I saw something, shame, maybe, or fear. She stared at the tabletop, knuckles pale. I made a mental note. She'd heard every word, and her silence was louder than any apology. Meredith moved on, discussing property values and community pride. I tuned out, scanning the crowd. Some looked uncomfortable. Others, especially the newer residents, hung on Meredith's every word. But not all. Mr. Patel, 2 rows back, caught my eye and gave the smallest nod. As the meeting dragged on, Mason texted me under the table. You're winning the room. I grinned. Maybe. Or maybe I was just making waves in the wrong pond. After the meeting, as chairs scraped and neighbors drifted out, Diane lingered by the coffee urn, fumbling with her papers. I approached, trying to seem casual. Tough job, Secretary, I offered. She jumped, nearly spilling her coffee. Oh, yes, just a lot to keep track of. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. You, stood your ground. That's good. I wanted to ask her what she knew, but her eyes darted to Meredith, who hovered nearby like a storm cloud. Thanks, I said instead. If you ever need help, just ask. She nodded, biting her lip, then shuffled away, leaving a faint scent of anxiety behind. Back home, Mason sprawled on the couch, scrolling through group chat drama. You made her nervous, he said, nodding toward Diane's name. Maybe she's got more to say than she lets on, I said. People usually do. I shut off the lights, the house settling into another restless night. Outside, the swing rocked in the moonlight, a silent promise that this fight was far from over. Before you go, what would you do if the HOA tried to rewrite the rules in your own home? Ever dealt with a board meeting that felt more like a courtroom? Let me know down in the comments where you're watching from. Things are just heating up on Magnolia Lane. By morning, word of the meeting had already scattered across Magnolia Lane like dandelion fluff. Neighbors who'd nodded politely yesterday now lingered a bit longer by their mailboxes, their conversations pausing whenever Mason or I passed. It was the kind of tension you could feel in your bones, like the hush before a thunderclap. Mason left early for class, leaving behind his half-eaten toast and a lopsided smile. "If Meredith shows up, just live stream it," he said, only half joking. The house felt bigger without him, quieter, every tick of the hallway clock echoing off the old wood floors. I tried to get on with work but kept glancing out the window, waiting for the next shoe to drop. It didn't take long. Just after noon, a car door slammed out front. Loud, deliberate. I watched from the kitchen as Meredith strode across our yard, not bothering with the walkway, heels stabbing the grass. In one hand, she held her phone. In the other, a thick manila envelope. She didn't even ring the bell, just marched up and rapped on the door, sharp and insistent. I opened it a crack. "Nora, we need to discuss several violations. May I come in?" Her voice was sugar with a hint of steel. "No, you may not," I said. "If you have something to say it here." I didn't invite her across the threshold. I remembered my father's words, never give a bully the home field advantage. She blinked at that, a flicker of annoyance tightening her jaw. "I'm authorized to inspect for compliance." "You're not authorized to come inside my home, and if you step over that line," I pointed to the worn welcome mat, "it's trespassing. You know the law as well as I do." She looked down, then up, eyes calculating. "You're making this difficult." "I'm making it legal," I replied. Meredith shuffled her envelope, her grip a little too tight. "If you continue to refuse, the board will have no choice but to escalate. Fines, possibly legal action." "Do what you need to," I cut in, "but next time, bring your lawyer, not your clipboard." Her lips thinned to a hard line. She handed me the envelope. "Consider this your final warning," she said it loud enough for Mrs. Wu across the street to hear. I noticed curtains shifting. Nothing happened on Magnolia Lane without an audience. She turned on her heel and marched away, shoes crunching on the gravel path she'd ignored minutes before. Only then did I exhale, shutting the door with more force than necessary. Inside, I slid the envelope open with a butter knife. The papers spilled out, photos of the mailbox, close-ups of the swing, a printed log of supposed noise complaints. Dates I'd never even had guests. At the bottom, a typed letter. "Further violations may result in civil penalties." My hands shook, but not with fear. This was intimidation, pure and simple. I set the envelope aside and grabbed my phone. If she wanted to play hardball, I could match her. I called Sam Torres, a local handyman who'd helped my father for years. "Sam, think you can help me check the boundary lines? I want to make sure Meredith's not pulling anything shady." He chuckled. "If she tries, she'll be sorry. I'll be over after lunch." As I waited, I walked the perimeter of the yard, looking for any sign Meredith had been snooping, broken twigs, footprints, anything out of place. Under the magnolia, I found a scuff in the dirt. My father's old survey stake was still there, red paint faded but stubborn as ever. I smiled. Dad always marked his ground. Sam showed up, tape measure in hand, boots muddy from another job. We walked the yard, swapping stories, him remembering my dad's stubborn streak, me recounting Meredith's latest stunt. He found no issues. "Your boundaries are clean, Nora. Don't let her rattle you." His confidence gave me a jolt of hope. Before he left, he grinned. "If she comes back, tell her I'll vouch for every inch." Evening brought Mason home, whistling, keys jangling. I filled him in. He listened, quiet at first, then smiled. "We'll outlast her, just like Grandpa would've." Night fell soft and heavy. I sat on the swing, breathing in magnolia and memory, watching the lights flicker in the house across the street. Diane Trent's silhouette moved behind the curtains, her head bowed. Was she keeping secrets, or just keeping the peace? This wasn't just about code violations anymore. It was about standing your ground, no matter who tried to push you off it. That night, sleep didn't come easy. I lay awake listening to the house settle, my mind replaying Meredith's visit and Sam's easy confidence. Somewhere around 2 a.m., I heard Mason in the hallway, his old sneakers padding softly, a sure sign he couldn't sleep either. The house was filled with whispers, none of them kind. By morning, I decided I'd had enough of feeling hunted in my own home. There was strength in knowledge, Dad always said, and answers hidden in places you least expected. The memory of his box of documents tugged at me again. How many times had I walked past it in the attic, too busy or too tired to dig in? Today felt different. I wanted something to fight back with, facts, not just stories. After breakfast, I grabbed a flashlight and made the climb up to the attic. The hatch creaked open, dust motes swirling in the beam of light. The air was thick, old wood, insulation, a hint of mothballs. I moved carefully, ducking low under the beams. The place felt haunted, but not by ghosts, by memories. Dad cursing under his breath while fixing a leak. Mason's giggle echoing from the far corner when he'd played hide-and-seek up here as a kid. I found the box in the farthest corner, wedged between a rusted metal fan and stacks of yellowed newspapers. The label was faded but still legible. Vance, Property Docs /HOA. I dragged it out, nearly dropping it on my foot. Kneeling in the half-dark, I opened the lid and started to sift through the contents. Receipts for fence repairs, old photographs of the house, some in black and white. But what caught my attention was a bundle of handwritten notes, tied up with a string, and a small, battered voice recorder. The notes were in Dad's cramped script. I flipped through the first page. Don't let them change the plat lines. They tried in '94. Met with Carl about the easement. Never trust a handshake without a notary. A smile tugged at my lips. I could almost hear his gravelly voice. The floorboards creaked suddenly. My breath caught. For a second I thought I wasn't alone, but it was just the house shifting as the day warmed up. Still, the attic felt smaller, shadows crowding the corners. I pressed the button on the old recorder. Static crackled, then my father's voice came through, distant but fierce. If you're hearing this, they're trying again. The HOA wants the back lot. They'll say it's for beautification, but they want to build a path. Don't let them. Chills ran up my spine. I kept listening. Names, dates, references to meetings with past HOA presidents. Apparently, Meredith wasn't the first to test the boundaries. A paper slipped loose and fluttered down, landing on my knee. It was a hand-drawn map. Survey lines, signatures, notes in the margins. The original property boundary, annotated in Dad's hand. That map was more valuable than any letter Meredith could ever write. My flashlight flickered. I tapped it, nerves jangling. The attic always felt like it was keeping secrets. I stuffed the notes, map, and recorder into a folder and hurried back downstairs, heart pounding. Down in the kitchen, I spread everything out on the table. Mason wandered in, hair wild, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "You up early, Mom?" I looked at him, pride swelling, had a hunch. Found Dad's old notes, and something better, a map that proves we own right up to the creek. Meredith can't argue with deeds and surveys. He grinned, pulling up a chair. Grandpa always did know how to keep receipts. I smiled. We're not fighting alone. We've got history on our side. The house seemed lighter with the morning sun shining through, illuminating every scribbled note and signature on the table. For the first time in weeks, hope felt real, like something solid you could hold in your hands. Outside, the swing moved gently in the breeze, carrying the weight of memory and quiet defiance. The table was a mess of old paper and possibility. Mason hunched over the hand-drawn map, brow furrowed, running a finger along the inked property lines. "You think this'll shut her down?" he asked, half skeptical, half hopeful. "It'll slow her down at least," I said, collecting the bundled notes and laying them next to the battered voice recorder. My father's script looped and angled across the pages, more alive now than it'd been in years. "No one argues with a deed, especially not one with county stamps and 3 signatures." But I couldn't shake the feeling we were missing something. A detail. Maybe a date. Meredith didn't strike me as someone who gave up easily. In Diane's trembling hands, her sidelong glances at every meeting hovered in my thoughts like static in the air. There was more going on behind those closed HOA doors. I snapped photos of the key documents with my phone, tucking the originals in a plastic sleeve. "If Meredith tries to loose these, we've got backups," I told Mason, who snorted. "Old school and new school," he said, and the tension in the room loosened a little. Mid-morning sunlight dappled the kitchen floor. Outside, the Magnolia swayed, branches heavy with bloom. The porch swing creaked, reminding me sharply of every summer day Dad watched the world go by stubbornly himself. I opened the back door, letting the scent of Magnolia fill the house. It was like breathing in memory. A knock rattled the front glass. I looked through the peephole. Diane clutching her purse like it held state secrets. Her posture was tight, eyes darting up and down the street before she dared step up. Mason slipped out of sight, probably sensing she'd talk easier with just me. I opened the door halfway. "Morning, Diane. Everything all right?" She hesitated, glancing at my messy table and then over her shoulder. "Can I come in, just for a minute?" I let her in, careful to close the door behind her. She stood in the entryway, smoothing her skirt, not quite looking at me. You found something, didn't you?" My heart thudded. Old property records, my dad kept everything. Diane nodded, shoulders slumping. She looked older today, worn out. "I remember. Your father used to bring copies to meetings, just in case. Made some of the presidents furious." There was a pause, thick with unspoken things. I waited, watching her fingers twist around her purse strap. "Diane," I said quietly, "you look like you've seen a ghost." Her lips pressed together. "It's just, Meredith asked me to find the original HOA agreements, the ones your dad kept talking about. She wants them gone. She doesn't want a paper trail. I thought you should know." I blinked, caught between anger and something like pity. "Thanks for telling me." Diane's hands trembled as she set a folded piece of paper on the counter. "You didn't get this from me. It's the only copy of the first bylaw amendments, the ones that say your lot's grandfathered in. It's all legal, but she's hoping no one will remember. Her voice broke. "She scares me sometimes." I reached out, squeezing her hand. "You did the right thing." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I'm not brave like you or your father." "You're braver than you think," I said. "And you're not alone." She nodded, already edging toward the door. "I have to go. Be careful, Nora. Meredith's not above bending the rules." With a last, nervous glance, Diane slipped out, vanishing down the walk as if she'd never been there. I exhaled, clutching the fresh evidence to my chest. The house felt different, like the walls themselves were rooting for us. I tucked the new document in with the rest, adding Diane's courage to my growing arsenal. Later, I sat on the porch swing, feet tucked up, breathing in magnolia and sunlight, thinking of Dad. The old tree was blooming strong, petals drifting like confetti across the lawn. For the first time, I felt a surge of real confidence. Whatever Meredith tried next, I was ready. The legacy Dad left wasn't just wood and land, it was neighbors who stood up when it mattered, and now that included Diane. If you were in Diane's shoes, would you risk everything to do what's right, or keep your head down and hope for the best? I'd love to know. Drop your answer and where you're watching from down below. The battle for Magnolia Lane's just getting started. Evening crept over Magnolia Lane, golden light stretching the shadows across my porch. I sat on the swing, legs tucked beneath me, thumb running over the edge of Diane's bylaw amendment. Everything felt sharper, more urgent, the way the neighborhood watched me, the new weight in Diane's steps as she hurried past my house later that night. Something had changed for her, too. For the first time, I could see it in the set of her jaw. She'd made her choice. Inside, Mason fiddled with the recorder and my father's notes, lining them up next to the map and fresh legal documents. "We've got a war chest now, Mom," he said, half a grin tugging at his lips. "You think Meredith's ready for us?" "Probably not," I said, though my stomach fluttered. "But it's time to stop playing defense." I'd spent weeks reacting threats, dodging evidence, hoping someone would notice the bullying. But with Diane's confession and the original bylaws in hand, I finally had the upper hand. Meredith wanted a fight? Fine. She was going to get one. I set about planning, pulling every trick from my years in IT and every bit of stubbornness I'd inherited from Dad. First step, document everything. I made copies, digital, physical, even mailed ones, set to my sister out in Michigan just in case. The next was subtler. I reached out to a property attorney who'd helped Dad years ago, a guy named Harris with a reputation for turning HOA intimidation back on itself. I didn't tell anyone, not even Mason, just in case. I'd learned the value of quiet moves. That night, the house was full of nervous energy. I barely ate dinner, replaying every meeting, every side-eyed glance from Meredith, every time Diane's pen shook. Mason picked at his food too, silent, until the news blared a story about homeowners suing their association for abuse of power. "You ever think about just moving?" he asked, quiet, eyes flicking to mine. I shook my head. "Never. This is Grandpa's house. It's our history. We're not running from anyone, especially not someone like Meredith." He smiled. "Didn't think so." The next morning, I waited for the neighborhood to quiet before setting my plan in motion. I installed a new camera at the porch, angled to catch the gate and mailbox. Mason double-checked the system, updating the firmware himself. He was learning fast and a little proud of it. Around noon, I took a walk around the block, pausing at Mrs. Wu's chatting about her roses, mentioning, very casually, how strange it was to see board members bending rules for some but not others. Word spread quick in a place like this. Let the rumors start to simmer. Let Meredith feel the heat. Later, as I reviewed my files, my phone buzzed. A text from Diane. Meredith wants an emergency board meeting tonight. She's got something big. Be ready. A knot formed in my stomach. Was she bluffing, or did she really think she could get away with whatever she was planning? I replied, "Thank you, Diane. Keep your head down." By sunset, Mason and I sat together, piecing through the last of the evidence. He glanced at the recorder, then at me. Think we should play it for everyone if it comes to that? I considered it, if we need to, but let's see what Meredith brings first. He squeezed my hand. We're ready. I looked out at the Magnolia, petals falling like gentle warnings onto the grass. We had truth on our side now, and allies too, even if some of them were afraid. The trap was set, and for the first time, I wasn't just hoping for survival. I was ready to win. The moon was rising by the time the emergency board meeting was called to order. The whole neighborhood seemed on edge, porch lights glowing, shadows flickering behind curtains. I'd never seen so many people crammed into the community hall. It felt like half of Magnolia Lane showed up, arms folded, waiting for fireworks. Mason walked with me, shoulders squared. I could tell he was nervous by how many times he checked his phone, making sure the new porch camera was streaming. "We'll catch everything," he muttered, almost to himself. "No editing history this time." Inside, the air hummed with low conversations. Meredith stood at the head of the folding table, her white blazer almost glowing under the fluorescent lights. Next to her, Diane sat with her notepad, eyes cast low, hands folded tight. I caught her gaze and offered a small nod. She gave the faintest of smiles back, an ally, if not a friend. Meredith called things to order with a gavel crack. Tonight we must address repeated, flagrant violations that threaten the standards we've all agreed to uphold. Her tone was syrupy, but her glare could have cut glass. She launched into her litany: mailbox color, unapproved, swing, excessive noise, even garden hose placement. It would have been comical if it weren't so calculated. The crowd shifted, a few mutters in my favor, but mostly people just looked tired of the drama, of being told what to care about. "Before you respond," Meredith announced, "let's remember the HOA's authority is absolute within our bylaws." I cleared my throat and stood, feeling all eyes land on me. "Actually, that's not true." My voice rang out, stronger than I expected. "This is a neighborhood, not a dictatorship. And for the record, my property is protected by original deed, county records, and bylaw amendments your own secretary delivered years ago." A hush fell over the room. Meredith's smile froze. She tried to speak, but I raised the file folder, holding it where everyone could see. "Here are survey maps signed by the county, original boundary documents, and the first set of bylaw changes. And a digital backup. Copies have already gone to an attorney and the county recorder's office." She sputtered, "These are outdated. The board—" I didn't flinch. "The board's power ends at the law, and I have evidence that these rules were changed in bad faith by you, Meredith. Some neighbors have received fines, others have had rules overlooked. Selective enforcement is illegal, and I'm not the only one keeping receipts." I glanced at Diane, who slowly stood up, voice trembling but clear. "The board hasn't always followed proper procedures. Some fines were unapproved. Some votes weren't properly recorded." She looked at Meredith, not with fear but resolve. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mr. Patel spoke up, voice ringing. "It's time we stopped being scared." Meredith looked rattled for the first time, hands gripping the table. She scanned the room, no longer in control. "If you side with them, you jeopardize—" "Jeopardize what?" I asked, calm now, all the nerves gone. "People's right to their homes, their dignity." For a moment, it was silent. Diane looked at me, and I saw real gratitude. Mason leaned forward, phone camera still rolling. "We're just asking for fairness, for our street to feel like home again." A neighbor in the back started clapping. It was hesitant but quickly caught on, applause swelling as if the room had been holding its breath for months. Meredith's jaw clenched, but even she could see the tide had turned. She tried to regain control, but no one seemed interested in listening anymore. Diane quietly handed me a slip of paper, a list of residents Meredith had targeted, evidence if it came to that. The meeting ended not with a bang, but with 100 quiet revolutions. Neighbors whispering, people hugging, a sense of relief rolling through the crowd. Outside, the air was crisp and cool. Mason grinned, for once looking more like a kid than a college man. "That felt good." "It did," I said, voice soft, heart thumping. "Feels like the start of something better." The porch swing waited, gentle in the night breeze. The magnolia tree stood tall, a witness to the battle we'd just begun to win. After the meeting, Magnolia Lane felt transformed. Gone was the sense of silent dread. Neighbors no longer averted their eyes when they passed. Instead, they lingered by fences and mailboxes, swapping stories that had lived too long behind closed doors. For the first time in ages, it felt like people were actually breathing. Mason and I got home late, the porch swing creaking in the moonlight as we slumped into its old embrace. The air was thick with the scent of magnolia and relief. Mason was grinning ear to ear, scrolling through a flood of messages from classmates and neighbors, screenshots, memes, snippets of Meredith's meltdown. I couldn't help but laugh. Who knew suburban justice could be so viral? He nudged me, showing off a string of supportive texts. "Look, even Mrs. Wu sent an emoji. That's gotta be a record." "Don't get cocky," I said, but the warmth in my chest wouldn't leave. "This isn't over. Meredith won't go quietly." True enough, the next morning brought another envelope taped to the door, this one thin and desperate. An invitation to meet privately, signed only by Meredith. I read it twice, noting the shift in tone. The board meeting hadn't just shaken her confidence, it had cracked something underneath. She wanted to talk, alone and soon. Mason frowned, reading over my shoulder. "You think it's a trap?" "More like damage control." I tapped the envelope on the kitchen counter, weighing my options. Meeting her could be risky, but I didn't want to look afraid or miss a chance to learn what she was really up to. Before I could decide, my phone buzzed. Diane's name popped up. "Be careful," her message read. "She's desperate. Don't let her corner you." I smiled at the loyalty behind her worry. "I'll keep my guard up," I texted back. Still, I checked the porch camera twice before heading out. We met in the park at the edge of Magnolia Lane, a neutral space, if there ever was one. Meredith was already there, perched stiffly on a bench under a line of pines. She looked smaller out here, less queen, more cornered animal. She wasted no time. "You humiliated me last night." I sat down, keeping a few feet between us. "You humiliated yourself." "All I did was shine a light." Her jaw worked. "You don't understand what this board means to me, my reputation." "It's a neighborhood, Meredith, not a throne." She glared, but her voice dropped. "If you back off, quietly I'll make your violations disappear. Clean slate." I let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "You're still bargaining, even now?" She pressed on. "Think about your son, your family's name. Don't make things harder than they have to be." I studied her. For the first time, I saw how scared she really was. Of losing power, losing face, maybe even losing herself. "You ever think about what all this has cost other people?" I asked quietly. "The neighbors who moved away, the ones who stayed silent? Even Diane's afraid to look you in the eye." That hit her. Her face crumpled, if only for a heartbeat. "This place was supposed to be safe," she whispered. "Perfect!" "Nothing's perfect, but it could be fair." She rose, pulling her coat tighter. "This isn't finished. The board will decide." I nodded, standing up as well. "Let them. We're ready for whatever comes next." Back at home, Mason was waiting, eyes searching mine. "She tried to bribe you?" "Offer me peace and quiet," I said, rolling my eyes. "Didn't take it." He grinned, proud and a little relieved. We watched the street through the window as dusk crept in, neighbors' porch lights twinkling on, a new sense of community quietly blooming. "Think we'll win?" he asked, voice hopeful. "We already are," I replied. "Every neighbor who stands up now, every rule we challenge, it matters." The porch swing rocked as I settled in again, Magnolia Lane shining in the golden hour, every shadow now a little less threatening. Ever been offered a shady deal just to keep quiet, or faced off with someone clinging to power for dear life? Share your story and let me know where you're tuning in from. Magnolia Lane's not done yet, and neither are we. The next morning, the neighborhood felt like it was holding its breath. Rain tapped against the kitchen window, steady and insistent. I sat with a mug, warming my hands, watching drops trail down the glass, thinking about Meredith's brittle offer and the promise I made. No backing down, not when the finish line was finally in sight. Mason wandered in, still yawning. "You sleep at all?" "Not really, too much to plan." I smiled, but it didn't quite reach my eyes. My phone buzzed. A text from Diane. "Emergency board meeting. Tonight. Meredith wants you there." I showed Mason. He whistled low. "She's not giving up." She was betting on fear, but we're not the same scared neighbors we used to be. That afternoon, I gathered my files, the deed, the bylaw amendments, the map, and the list Diane slipped me. Even tucked a thumb drive into my purse just in case. I took a slow walk around the house, touching the porch swing's chain, pausing under the blooming magnolia tree. Its petals were falling, swirling in little eddies, like a gentle send-off for my dad. The rain had slowed to a mist by evening. As we left for the meeting, Mason put his arm around my shoulders. "Ready for the main event?" "Let's give him a show," I said, grinning in spite of myself. The community hall felt different this time, buzzing with conversation, not suspicion. Neighbors greeted each other in clusters, voices low but urgent. Even Mrs. Wu, always shy, gave me a tight little nod as I passed. I felt stronger, knowing I wasn't walking in alone. Meredith was already at the front, eyes cold, flanked by Linda and an uneasy-looking Diane. The gavel banged. "Let's begin. We're here to address ongoing violations and the disruption caused by..." She hesitated. "By Nora Vance." Mason squeezed my hand under the table. I stood, steady. "Before you go down your list, I'd like the board and the neighborhood to see something." I pulled out the original map and handed copies to Diane, then to Linda and Mr. Patel, who had joined the board for this meeting. "This is the survey my father filed with county stamps. It shows our property line, unchanged and legally protected." A ripple of whispers snaked through the room. Meredith tried to brush it aside, but I pressed on, laying out the bylaw amendment, the notarized signatures, the list of targeted residents, each document a shield. Every fine, every violation, all selectively enforced. I have proof, and my lawyer has it too. But what matters most is this. Magnolia Lane is a community, not a kingdom. The rules can't just serve the board. They're supposed to protect all of us. Meredith bristled. "That's a gross oversimplification." Diane stood, interrupting. I need to clarify something. The board hasn't always recorded votes properly. Some actions, including recent fines, weren't voted on at all." She looked Meredith square in the eyes. "We owe the truth to everyone here. Maybe it's time for an independent audit." Linda, looking around nervously, cleared her throat. "And maybe it's time for new elections." The room stirred, a wave of agreement, mutters, cautious hope. Meredith's voice was almost lost in the noise. "You're making a mistake." I let out a breath. "Maybe, but it's ours to make." The meeting adjourned with no decisions, just murmurs and a promise. This was bigger than me or Meredith. Neighbors stayed after, swapping stories, forming new plans. For the first time, real change felt possible. Back home, I collapsed on the swing, rain-damp air washing the sweat from my forehead. Mason sat beside me, head back, laughing softly at something on his phone. "You think they'll actually change things?" he asked. I watched the magnolia petals drift down, silver in the porch light. "They already are." For the first time since Dad died, Magnolia Lane felt like home again. The days that followed moved in slow, rolling waves. Magnolia Lane was alive in a new way. Neighbors gathering in driveways, trading notes, even a few nervous laughs. I heard stories whispered beneath the magnolia tree, confessions about Meredith's extra fines, the mysterious vanishing of complaint letters, and late-night threats made behind closed doors. The atmosphere buzzed with a cautious kind of hope, as if everyone was trying to remember what community actually meant. Mason caught the energy too. He set up a group chat for the neighborhood, no board, just residents, where photos of lost cats mingled with notes on bylaws and reminders to water the roses. Even Mrs. Wu joined in, sending daily pictures of her garden. It felt like we were building something, maybe for the first time, something that could last. It wasn't long before the official notice arrived. A public special meeting called by petition. The agenda was clear: new elections for the board, review of all past fines, and a chance for residents to voice concerns on the record. My stomach fluttered as I read it, nerves and excitement tangling up together. The meeting itself was nothing like the tense affairs Meredith once ran. The hall was packed again, but this time people chatted openly, some even bringing homemade cookies and lemonade. There was an energy, a willingness to listen. Mr. Patel opened the meeting as interim chair, voice strong. We're here to talk about where we go from here. Magnolia Lane belongs to all of us. Meredith sat in the front row, a shadow of her old self, shoulders hunched, lips pursed, eyes darting across the crowd. She looked smaller without her usual allies flanking her. Linda sat 2 seats away, nervously twisting a ring on her finger. Diane, not taking notes this time, was just another neighbor in the crowd. Mr. Patel addressed the group, then opened the floor. People lined up to speak, some nervously, others with surprising passion. I waited my turn, heart pounding as each voice added to the chorus. One woman described being fined for wind chimes. A dad told how he got a warning for letting his kids chalk the sidewalk. When it was finally my turn, I stood, holding my father's old survey map in one hand. I'm Nora Vance. You all know my story by now, but it's not just mine. Magnolia Lane is full of people who want to belong, to build something together. The rules are supposed to protect us, not divide us. That's what my father believed. That's why he fought to keep this place fair. It's why I fought too. I let the words hang there, then continued, voice a little steadier. If we want to move forward, we have to do it together. No more secrets, no more bullying. Let's fix this. Let's make it ours again. There was a quiet, warm applause. Even Diane wiped her eyes, shoulders shaking just a bit. Meredith stared straight ahead, unmoving. The voting started soon after. Paper ballots passed hand to hand, the whole process open and honest, neighbors watching neighbors, nobody hiding in the shadows. When the results were read aloud, Meredith didn't even look up. Linda stood, shaky but determined, and thanked everyone for giving her a chance. Diane was voted in as secretary. Her name met with a round of applause. Mason grinned at me, pride in his eyes. You did it, Mom. Not just me, I said, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. We all did. On the walk home, the air felt lighter, no threat hanging over our heads, no footsteps behind us. I paused beneath the magnolia, tracing the initials carved in the old swing, thinking of Dad and the promise I'd made to never let this place lose its heart. Magnolia Lane was ours again, and for the first time it felt like everyone truly belonged. A week after the election, Magnolia Lane was almost unrecognizable. People waved from porches, conversations flowed over hedges, and children's laughter returned to the sidewalks, chalk drawings trailing like secret maps across driveways. Even the air seemed lighter, sweet with magnolia and hope. For the first time in years, I could swing gently on my father's old bench and not feel watched. I spent the morning cleaning out a box of files from the fight, stacks of faded letters, court-stamped deeds, every artifact from the war we'd just survived. As I tucked away the last document, Mason burst in, breathless and grinning. There's a neighborhood cookout starting up. Diane's bringing her famous lemonade. They want you there, Mom. I hesitated, glancing around at the kitchen. So many years of keeping to myself, of bracing for the next knock at the door. Think they'll let an old troublemaker in? He laughed, tossing me the keys. You started this. You better show up. The cookout sprawled across 3 lawns, folding tables loaded with casseroles, fruit pies, and paper cups of lemonade. Kids darted between legs, dogs barked, someone tuned an old radio to a golden oldies station. For a moment, I stood at the edge, letting it all soak in. The colors, the laughter, the way people leaned in, not away. Diane waved me over, her smile brighter than I'd ever seen. Nora, you're the guest of honor. Mr. Patel toasted with sweet tea, declaring it a new day for the lane. Linda shyly offered me a slice of pie. Even Mrs. Wu hugged me, whispering, "Thank you for all of us." Mason slid beside me, nodding at the swing beneath the old magnolia tree. The same swing Dad built, the one Meredith once called out of compliance. Now it stood as a quiet monument to everything we'd reclaimed. As dusk painted the sky pink and orange, I wandered to the swing, feeling the wood cool beneath my hands. Mason joined me, feet kicking the grass, both of us looking out at neighbors laughing under twinkle lights. You did it, Mom. Grandpara'd be proud. I squeezed his hand, blinking back a wave of emotion. I just kept his promise. This place was always about more than rules. It was about belonging. He nodded, eyes shining. You gave that back to everyone? A hush fell, broken only by the wind rustling magnolia leaves. I traced the initials Dad had carved into the swing so long ago, my own initials now joining his. The legacy wasn't just in paper or property lines. It lived in the way people cared for each other, in the laughter echoing across the yards, in the strength to stand up when it mattered. I stood, letting the swing rock gently behind me, and turned to join the celebration. As I stepped away, I caught Mason's smile, and the old swing swaying in the golden light. A memory and a promise, alive and unbreakable. Dad used to say, justice doesn't always come easy, but dignity's worth every fight. Looking at Magnolia Lane now, I finally understood. Have you ever faced down an HOA or fought to protect something that mattered to you? Share your story below, or just tell me where you're watching from. Every voice counts, and you never know who you might inspire. Magnolia Lane proved that to me, and I hope it does for you too.